Hi, I'm Rabbi Dan Selsberg at Temple Shalom, Bridgewater, New Jersey. It's one of my Rosh Hashanah talks. For those of us of a certain age, the moment you first became aware of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001 are seared into your mind as if it were last week. But of course, it's a 20-year-old memory. A moment quite unlike our slow-moving and maddeningly endless pandemic. A decisive few hours that shape the contours of our lives for years to come. Maybe you're driving to work, maybe you were at school, maybe you were there, maybe you're not yet born. Think of how you felt or would have felt with the unbroken blue sky, the knowledge that our world had irrevocably changed. I was about a week at that point in time into a 5-year program at rabbinical school at the Ziegler School in LA. Amidst the tears and the trembling and the phone calls and the prayers and the sadness and the resolve, we returned to our regularly scheduled classes. So many students, as you might guess, came from, grew up in, used to live in, had dear friends and family in New York City. Some said we shouldn't have class, which is understandable. While those who were unable to stay, of course, didn't have to. While the topics were all focused on the murderous events of the day, one professor's words still reverberate with me. Rav Pinchas Giller, a character if there ever was one, was asked why he was still teaching, given his deep ties to New York. And he said that whoever did this, if they found out that, amongst all the destruction and chaos they had caused, that they had stopped Jews from studying Torah, that Jews were no longer doing the things that made us distinct, they'd be happy with that. And part of how we counter hatred in the world is to teach, learn, and live a Torah of love and compassion whenever we're able to. We do this in good times, and we do it during trying times. The mass murder of the Al-Qaeda attacks can't be justified, but it can be understood. It can't be made right, but we can respond in ways that prove more beneficial than harmful. The decisions of policymakers are not my main concern. You and I don't command troops, but we can take an honest look at the role that faith in a power greater than ourselves plays in our world. In the face of the fundamentalist hatred that animates Al-Qaeda and the Taliban, and others of all faiths and those of no faith, it's a live question. Our Torah reading on the morning of the second day of Rosh Hashanah clearly portrays a God for whom zealous violence is unremarkable, which has to give us pause. Jews, Muslims, Christians, or anyone else can understand that God, or whatever philosophy or ism is used as a substitute for purpose, meaning, and explanatory myths, that we can put forward allegiance to God or godlike figure as a solution to the need to improve a deeply broken world. And through that allegiance, crimes can be justified. That's the trap. We can fall into the trap of thinking that God is the cure, but God, or godliness, is the lure. Faith is a belief that cannot be proven or disproven, a sense of something greater than ourselves. In itself, faith is neutral. It can be used for good or for ill. Faith is what drove the heroes of September 11th, the first responders, the police officers, firefighters, and others who rushed, as Reb Springsteen so memorably put it, upstairs into the fire. He captured that lure so well. May your hope give us hope. May your faith give us faith. May your strength give us strength. May your love give us love. Faith, of course, and a cause greater than themselves is also what drove the villains of September 11th. Those who are committed to murder and destruction were also driven by faith. Faith is powerful and drives many of our most powerful actions. Without it, we'd be hard-pressed to accomplish anything that was not purely selfish or primarily driven by concern for one's own immediate family. It's only when we have faith that there is more that the world begins to change in significant ways. We have to look at our world 20 years removed from that horrible day to understand this. But it's also more than that. Somehow, our admirable embrace of understanding the other has unfortunately led us to a hollowing out of conviction in our society. This is actually a great fear of mine. Extremes motivate In Afghanistan, it seems that the Taliban was more motivated, more dedicated to their cause than the moderate Western-backed government. They weren't better armed, not better financed, certainly not with better technology. What if motivation driven by faith is the decisive factor in global struggles? If faith and belief motivate, then we need to know that faith based in justice, mercy, forgiveness, love, we need to make that penetrate our hearts. Now, faith is a word that Jews don't often use. Emunah in Hebrew, maybe less so faith. We tend to be more comfortable talking about behaviors or ideas or even feelings before faith. That's true for many rabbis, including me. Now, last spring, when our son Eitan celebrated becoming bar mitzvah, many of you know he's an atypical kid, and when thinking about just what this was all about, I explored the idea of faith. And this is what I thought then. What is faith? Faith is acting on the belief that our words and actions will produce a better result than reason alone would indicate, an irrational belief in better outcomes than statistics warrant. An orientation that holds that we are more than just material, more than mere matter, atoms in a blind universe, but that we each have a soul and that our actions matter. Each of us has a soul, a neshama. There's no laboratory test to determine the truth of that statement. It takes faith. And when I think of what it's like to raise a special needs child or to maintain long-term relationships with anyone, faith is an essential aspect. For all of us, for our lives together, I think are lives of faith. Faith that it's all worth it. Faith that there's a way forward. Faith in our souls, in each other, in love. I don't think it's quite rational. I think it's faith. These insights are not gained in moments of ease or of control and leisure. Faith is gained, tested, proven, and strengthened in moments of darkness, moments of challenge, moments of doubt, moments of chaos. When there are no known rules, no referee to enforce boundaries, comforting boundaries, no teacher to tell you you've done right, moments of struggle and failure and frustration, the uneasy life, the unquiet life, and those moments of uncertainty, of deep and real doubt, together we have encountered constancy and faith. That's what I wrote for a bar mitzvah, and I want to expand on it. The fact that faith is essential for our interpersonal relationships is true. And for those of us who regard ourselves as skeptics, cultural Jews, even as jaded Americans, I want to emphasize the centrality of faith, because I think everything hinges on it. A central idea of Jewish civilization is that we are bound in a brit, a sacred covenant, with a God who lures us, but always seems to be just out of reach. It is worth asking just how this idea has persisted through thousands of years and massive cultural changes in every corner of the globe, in the absence of splitting seas and miraculous rescues. In fact, rescues of any sort have been disappointingly infrequent over the long course of Jewish history. Notice it is not an unrealistic faith that when the storm comes, thinking that we'll somehow dodge the raindrops. Part of the secret is hiding in plain sight. It's the attitude that Judaism plants within us, the orientation it gives us, the direction to which it points us. From the start, Avraham ha'ivri, the Torah calls Abraham the Hebrew, ha'ivri, with the commentators explaining this because he comes me'aver, from the other side of the river Euphrates. He's an immigrant, he's a foreigner, setting the example for us to be ready, to be unlike our neighbors, to be countercultural and courageous enough to be distinct, and to have the deep empathy for others who are in similar situations. Have compassion towards those who are different and might feel out of place. Then the Exodus narrative. Its familiar call to act justly to the stranger, because you know the feelings of the stranger. You were a stranger in the land of Egypt. Ethics written into our very identity. Our faith requires that we strive to see the world from the other's perspective. This is part of our faith's great guard against fundamentalist excess. We are a resilient people because our sacred scroll tells the story from the perspective of the enslaved, not of the master. History written by the despised and oppressed, not by the winners. We suffer, we err, we are exiled. Our master's story is not a triumphant tale. This is not to make you depressed, but resilient. not to make you simply optimistic, but to make you committed to taking the steps needed to go forward, even if you fall, even though you fall, no matter how many times you fall, or are pushed, or are kicked. This is why we survived Egypt and Babylon and Persia, Greece and Rome and Byzantium, crusaders and caliphs and inquisitions, and Nazis and Soviets, and the list is not yet complete. Resilience, compassion, distinguishing practices that allowed us to take the best of the surrounding culture while remaining distinctive. Now, we in our time face serious issues. The issues surrounding the anniversary of 9/11 is just a start. The devastating flooding across our region is deeply sobering. 1,000 problems require 1,000 approaches, but one underlies them: the faith of the resilient, the attitude of the people who believe that history demands the unjustly oppressed go free, the people who boldly claim that the creator of the planet commands us not only to master the earth, but to safeguard it, that we are all sisters and brothers, that we are to know the feelings of the stranger. The Torah teaches that the Israelites were so close to the promised land when they gave in to their fears and their doubts. They lost faith in the idea that a better world was achievable and became a self-fulfilling prophecy when the Torah tells us that those that lost hope never made it out of the desert of Sinai. As Rabbi Sharon Brous teaches, it's a message that if you can't live with hope, you can't live. You'll never make it. Our resilience is based on a vision that the way it was yesterday and the way it is today is not the way it has to be tomorrow. With all of our divisions and all of our problems and the fearsome realities that literally flood us from above or menace us from halfway around the world, we take steps forward, even when it takes more steps than we thought we would have to take. And the Judaism that can take us there is ours. I'm a pluralist. I believe that we need diverse and conflicting approaches to make Jewish life work. And insular Judaism will survive the temptations of America, but on many issues, from granting equal opportunities to women, to allowing LGBT Jews to live full lives, to understanding the scientific realities of our pandemic moment, Haredi Judaism, ultra-Orthodox Judaism, has not performed as well as it could. But we have to admit that the more acculturated branches of Judaism, ourselves included, have failed to produce thickly woven communities and compelling rationales to keep younger generations engaged in their heritage. There's a motivation gap. We risk failing to pass along our incredible tradition of resilience and hope that we received from our ancestors. It's an uneasy balance. It's not easy to walk this walk, but we have to step up. So it's a troubling 20th anniversary. But like the 9/11 Commission looked at the facts to reach conclusions that could help guide a better way forward, we can do the same by looking at the dangers that still surround us and know that we have to be motivated by the finest in our tradition to have the fortitude to build a better world. I could rattle off a we didn't start the fire style list of the problems we face. The first step in handling any of them is to develop an internal sense of morality and obligation, responsibility and purpose, faith that our lives have meaning. This is what I see when I see heroes helping neighbors through floods, food to the hungry, words of comfort to the bereaved, people bringing companionship to the lonely, encouragement to others in hard times, because if we lose hope, we might as well go back to Egypt. We'll never make it to the promised land. We have a long way to go. We have to remember that God is not the cure, God is the lure, motivating us to move in the direction of goodness and compassion and knowing the feelings of the other. We should have faith that we will live up to our historic obligations and to build a brighter world. May you and your loved ones be blessed with love and health and purposefulness in the year to come. May our communities rebuild and find the strength to tackle the myriad challenges that follow us. And may memories of those who have gone before help guide us on our way. Chag Sameach and Shana Tova.